to Behind the Ballot, where politics meets real life. We break down state and federal issues, showing how policy shapes everyday Americans. Engaged, balanced, and informative. That's our promise. I'm your host, Mikkel Jenkins.
And I'm Muhammad Ali joining in as usual, Mikhail. How are you doing today? How's it's been a hot Monday over here in Baltimore.
Yeah, it's very hot here in
Cooking.
New Jersey, Mount Laurel area. Going to be even hotter tomorrow. So hopefully everyone is staying cool, as I know it is going to cool off a lot as the weekend approaches, especially Memorial Day weekend.
Yeah.
There's supposed to be a lot of rain, unfortunately. Feels like this happens every year. But
Constantly.
luckily enough that the new Star Wars movie actually comes out on Friday, so that's what I will be doing with my time. Well, what me and my girlfriend will be doing with our time
Yeah.
this weekend,
Good luck and
outside of
enjoy.
just
We need to
relaxing.
get some Battlefront in again sometime. It's been a while.
So actually, I've started playing again.
Yeah.
So I've started playing again, getting back into it. It is, it's basically the same from when we left. Some people
Yeah.
recognize the game standards, like when it comes to 1v1s, things of that scenario. But there's still people that are assholes. But that's the name of the game. But since we last spoke, there has been some, updates, such as what's been going on with the U.S. and Iran peace talks, as well as the China summit outcomes, as well. Looking at the Cuba drone threat as well, which has been in the news in the last few weeks and even the months leading up, as there have been a blockade around Cuba and restriction on their electricity. So I know there has been complete blackouts over within that area. And then as we move to domestic
Honestly
pieces,
it's kind of funny how much America has been beefing with Cuba because
yeah,
most people at this point most Americans don't even remember a time where Cuba was any kind of a threat to America. You know what I mean? Like, before it was only a threat because it was being fueled by the Soviets. Now
yeah,
it's just that bad blood from the people who used to be in power still don't like them
yeah,
because
like
of
the
that.
the
Literally what it
Castros in
is.
them,
Yeah.
literally,
Like, oh,
literally.
Fidel Castro and his family. Oh, we gotta be very against this country. Meanwhile, we're doing business like usual with other corrupt leaders across the world.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. I mean, there's even a crazy theory that Fidel Castro is Justin Trudeau's father or like grandfather or something like that, because they look so starkly alike.
Yeah.
Crazy rabbit hole theory. But
I
however,
saw
that's
pictures
just
of that. They do look a lot alike.
no, yeah, they do look a lot alike. It's very and it's a very interesting conspiracy theory and take, I will say. But yeah, the evidence for that's kind of crazy. But
Yeah.
on the domestic side of things, we're going to be focusing on the Massey versus APAC and the Kentucky 4th congressional race. And then we're going to be providing some legislative updates, such as for housing, transportation, and reconciliation, as well as, leading, ending off with our, our new segment that we always want to kind of continue to do, miscellaneous. So we're going to be looking at funds, trades, and speculation, all that have been in the news within the last few weeks, last few days. Sorry. So starting off first with the Iran war. So as always, it's Monday, May 18th. We are now 78 days into the Iran conflict, and we're watching fragile peace talks, Iran's bold play on the Strait of Hormuz, and fresh Trump Xi trade announcements as well. And we also have the continued alleging of Cuba's drone buildup. And then from just on the international side of things, Trump announced he's postponing a planned U.S. military strike on Iran, originally set soon. I believe that was going to be
Set
tomorrow,
soon.
actually.
Was
I think
gonna
it was going to be
happen any
Tuesday.
second.
I think it was tomorrow that these strikes were going to be taking place, but he pushed these off after direct request from the leaders of the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar. He cited serious negotiations were underway and expectations of a deal that prevents Iran from getting nuclear weapons while keeping U.S. forces ready. Iran has rejected key U.S. conditions, including transferring 400 kilograms of enriched uranium, limiting to one nuclear site, and no war compensation. and withholding frozen assets. Tehran counters with demands for a permanent end to hostilities, full sanctions lift, Strait of Hormuz reopening, and asset release before deeper nuclear talks. Reports indicate that the U.S. may be softening to allow enrichment up to 3.67% with over 25 billion in funds, but mutual rejections continue. The ceasefire remains strained with violations, drone incidents near allies, and Trump warning the deal is on life support. Mediators in Pakistan have seen limited progress, and Trump has used blockade threats and military posturing as leverage. And this 10-week war has already reshaped regional dynamics and energy markets. And it's important to note that that 3.67% is just about exactly the same that was written in Obama's deal
Yeah.
back in, I think, Obama's second term was when that deal was originally brokered. And I think it was what, 1 billion in cash, or that was flown over. That was the reasoning the Obama administration flew that cash over was because it was from weapons arms disputes from like the 1980s or 1970s, I believe. So realistically, Iran had a right to that money because it was given court disputes, and the court found that the damages would have been going to Iran, and that was that cash. So now we hear that there's stomach for 3.6%, which is the same thing that Obama got, which we just talked about, and now with over 25 billions in funds, even though there are mutual rejections, just the fact that this is even a softening fit for this negotiations just really puts into perspective how god awful these negotiations are truly going, because now we're diving back into this deal that Trump has always stated was so bad for the United States and put the United States in such a weaker strategic uh, area compared to this new deal that he's trying to put together. But you're seeing that there's forms of sanctions reliefs, as well as the 3.67 enrichment, which they will be able to use for various capabilities. And it's just mind-boggling to see that these levels of negotiations are once again only being fruitful by facelifting the original deal that Obama had made.
I mean,
Muhammad,
really,
what are
I
your
think
thoughts?
the funniest thing about this all is that the the goal of the deal of what they're saying now is to get this straight back to what it was before. So
Yeah,
that's
literally.
that's already, it brings up the question: then why'd you even attack in the first place? If
Why
that's
did you
the
take in the first
goal now,
place?
why'd you even attack in the first place? And the second question is, if this was an attempt to get Iran to bow down to the American imperialist, with more of an intention of giving up its nuclear energy and product, I think that this is kind of a, how do you say it? I mean, maybe if you did like, maybe I can see the logic if you just show like indomitable force and completely take over, win whatever you do against them. That's one thing. It's a
Yeah,
second thing to then like kind of kick the beehive and then wonder why you're getting stung by bees, you know? And that's really what
yeah,
we've seen here, is kicking the beehive and then wondering why we're getting stung by bees. And
yeah,
it,
literally,
and literally
literally.
trying to group up the nuclear deal with the peace deal for what's going on with the oil, it's just literally two different problems.
Yeah, literally. They need to separate the two. Focus on the straight first, then move on to the nuclear side of things. Because in that aspect, you're not going to get both. Iran has stated
Yeah,
you're not going to get both. So there's
yeah,
no reason to continue to push for these negotiations outside of the only reasoning would be so that Israel can continue its bombing campaign so that they can try to put Iran out of submission, which with 78 days in, it's not going to happen already.
yeah.
Literally, it's not going to happen. I mean, there was just I don't know if you saw this, was a mushroom cloud explosion that actually happened over in Israel over the weekend. Not sure exactly what was the commotion over that explosion, but it seems like there was some firing left and right that happened over this weekend. But it's ridiculous to think that we still are dragging ourselves down this path of removing their nuclear enrichment when we know that that's not the case. Even
Yeah.
Obama knew that wasn't the case, and he obviously knew because he stated it, and Biden's Secretary of State stated it as well, Anthony Belkin, that Netanyahu and Israel both came to both presidents with the same PowerPoint presentation and tried to win them over. And both of them, Biden and Obama, decided not to. And you did not see these effects that we are having now. The Strait stayed open. During this whole nuclear deal that took place, there was no bombings, no killings of innocents, no U.S. troops being injured as well, no downed F-22 jets, which I think is astonishing that it's happening within Donald Trump's presidency that this has happened.
Yeah.
But it's just ridiculous that we're still negotiating on this precipice that we can dismantle their nuclear enrichment program when we know it's not going to be able to happen. Some of the greatest negotiators, like as I'm continuously saying, like Obama and them, they were able to literally put them within a confined box when it came to nuclear enrichment, and it's now just open. And who knows, they could very well just go ahead and start enriching and get closer to a bomb because of all of this fiasco that has taken place.
Yeah.
But to what Muhammad was saying earlier, that the two need to be separate, and we're going to talk about Iran's new Strait of Hormuz system, which we have been talking about, kind of building upon with each podcast. Because before there was the legislation, and now they're actually putting out the system in a formal mechanism. So, under its Supreme National Security Council to manage traffic in the Strait of Hormuz, a new body, reportedly the Persian Gulf Strait Authority, will designate routes, require prior approvals, and collect transit fees for specialized services like security and navigation, potentially up to 2 million per ship. In some reports, this applies mainly to cooperating commercial vessels, excluding those linked to adversarial projects. Officials frame it as sovereign control amid the ceasefire, but it risks escalating tensions over one of the world's most vital oil choke points. Obviously, this is normally 20% of the global supply runs through here.
Yeah.
And this all comes as the U.S. naval actions and Iranian responses have already reduced traffic sharply. I mean, I was looking at a map over the weekend about the Strait of Hormuz traffic, and it's astonishing just how little there is. I mean, the charts started, they're like at the top, and then just completely drops down from the beginning of this war. And oil prices are only going to continue to potentially get worse, especially if this gas tax isn't passed, as well as if this E15 bill is not passed either. There's only going to be more harm that comes to Americans' pockets. And that's the strategic long game that's being played that we've talked about. It is the hammering of constant attacks from the United States and from Israel to try to corner Iran, and or submit Iran into a deal where Iran is just going to strategically and patiently wait out and put as much economic pain as they can on the Gulf states as well as the United States, because Iran knows once the Gulf states start to get hit extremely and exceptionally hard, they will start to have reservations about this whole thing to begin with. I mean, we saw in the beginning when Trump was prioritizing Israel, how UAE, Qatar, and how they were all feeling about that. So it could only possibly get worse if this continues to go on, and Iran goes further on the offensive and starts to strike additional Gulf state energy infrastructure, as well as the cable lines that they were threatening
Yeah.
to cut too. So they have a lot of
They live in a very
advantages
pivotal
here.
area of the world when it comes to resources and more.
No, it very much is. I mean, outside of that, it's Taiwan, which we're going to tie into next with the China summit outcomes. But yeah, no, these are two major. These places, as in Iran and Taiwan, are going to be some of the major flashpoints within the next 10 to 15 years. I truly think so. Iran, obviously, with the oil, the war, and everything, and Taiwan specifically with what was said during the China summit, as well as just their importance, because obviously all of the chips are made in there from our laptops, our phones, cars, all of that stuff. It all comes from Taiwan. So that's why their importance is so critical. And now moving on to the China summit outcome. So, following Trump's meeting with Xi Jinping in Beijing, the White House announced several deals. China committing to at least 17 billion annually in U.S. agricultural products, soybeans, which is emphasized in this. This is going to be for 2026 and 2028. And then approval for 200 Boeing aircraft purchases with potential for more, restored market access for U.S. beef and poultry, and steps on rare earth mineral supply chains. And this is important to note that a lot of these Trump tariffs in the beginning of his presidency targeted a lot of these commitments and agreements that are now being made, to say the least.
Yeah.
And I mean, China committing to 17 billion annually in U.S. agricultural products. I was looking at reports; they used to be around $30 billion annually, so it's still almost half of what was normally done. And it's not even that 20 million that the soybean farmers have seen a void in from this original trade war that had took place beginning of this year. And there's going to be a new bilateral board of trade, another board, of course. So it's going to be boards of trade and investment, which are
They
planned
love their
with
boards.
yeah, they love their boards, and
Yeah.
this board is going to be with Xi, slated for it's going to be with President Xi Jinping and Donald Trump as a way to coordinate economic efforts and or investments. And also, Xi is slated for a White House visit this fall. So who knows if he actually does come? But it's important to note that yes, we are the ones that are announcing these deals, but it's also important to note that we're not hearing anything from the Chinese media about
Yeah.
these deals either, which I think is very, very important. And we know how Donald Trump loves to beat his chest on a lot of these great deals that he has or has, states that he made, but they don't truly come to fruition. So as these weeks and months truly roll out from this summit, we're going to be definitely checking to see if these agreements are actually something that is holding upon China, or it was just save face just so that Trump can think that he got something from all of this. When realistically, it doesn't seem like that. We've gotten much out of it. It seems like we've gotten a whimsical of a deal.
Yeah.
I mean, as I said, 17 billion, 200 Boeing aircrafts, US beef and poultry, and steps in rare earth minerals, where Donald Trump made the steps so that all these things would have to be our ask because of these damn tariffs.
Yeah.
Like 200 Boeing aircraft purchases, and that's not even confirmed officially by China. So it's just like it's ridiculous to truly see that he's beating his chest over this deal when
I mean,
nothing is coming from it.
we've seen it constantly, time and time again. I remember back when it was like AT&T, I mean Apple, where they were saying that Apple has promised to invest 500 billion into the United States. Citibank has promised to invest 300 billion into the United States, XYZ amounts. And I remember that these deals that Trump was pounding his chest on, celebrating as like some kind of great accomplishment for his behalf, is that these are deals already existing in the first place. So, like, for example, it was Tim Cook agreed to build a factory in America for the glass, specifically like the glass that goes on the iPhones, and that's only like a portion of the iPhones. And that was going to be like a few billion, tens of billions, hundreds of billions investment into the overall U.S. It's already been planned for the next 5-10 years. So then he goes to Trump when it comes to the tariffs, announces that, oh yeah, here I've got this gold plaque for you, and also I'm investing 500 billion into the United States. And then it's all of a sudden, well, Apple is in the good light of Trump's eyes, and also they don't even have to actually do anything or change anything from what they were originally doing in order to do that. It was just about the presentation. A lot of the time, it's just about the presentation for Trump and the fact that he's able to say, oh, I did this. This is me. I accomplished this. And so he's able to go ahead and make the same deal or even a worse deal than what was already in play before. And then he'll still pound his chest, acting like, well, something got done and I'm the one who did it. Therefore, it's very good. And it's frustrating because it's hard when it's a big deal, like a big important talk, like talking trades between China and America. You want to have the president be somebody whose word you can rely on and trust. And you really don't know. Or I should say, actually, you expect him more to say something that's not true when it comes to deals that have been agreed upon then you expect him to actually say something that's factual about what's happening, and it
Yeah,
is frustrating.
it's extremely frustrating, and multiple reports are even coming out from this China summit that this is the worst China summit that the U.S. has ever partaken in, and that we haven't gotten anything from this summit and all these deals that have been stated. But as I said, we will see and we will track and we will report on what's going on with those deals and how. Also, Trump's comments on Taiwan's weapons have been added as a layer of friction as he tries to use them as leverage. And he's basically stating that, he doesn't want to fight a war with Taiwan, but Taiwan has stated that they are an independent country themselves. This was actually this was over the weekend as Trump was touting about how, Taiwan is important, but, we don't want to go over there and, poke the Chinese bear. And normal well, in previous presidents, that's usually never been the tone. The tone is always we respect China. We just have investments and economic relationships with Taiwan and nothing from that. But this war has changed that drastically, as we've seen that the I think is what the opposition lead party leader within Taiwan has went over to Beijing, met with Xi Jinping, and actually has spoke about a peaceful reunification of Taiwan and China.
Yeah,
So all this has really changed a lot of dynamics, and with him stating that he thinks that China is going to go for Taiwan in the next 5 years, um, I mean, I don't doubt it, but it's funny to say that the next 5 years, even because that'll be when he's not in office,
not in
signifying
office.
that
Yeah,
he thinks that, yeah, signifying that he thinks the next person that gets in is going to be too weak to do anything to stop China going after Taiwan, thinking that he's the biggest bad in the world. Where realistically, uh, you know, you could mostly say that within that whole China summit debate, that the United States was not the strongest country within that room,
yeah.
realistically. Economically, definitely, we're staggering with China on AI and on various ventures. We are very much staggering against China. I wouldn't say militarily, because we do have one of the best militaries in the world. But however, on
It's the one
various
the
other
one
metrics,
thing that we know we put a lot of money into. The one
literally,
thing we know that's getting the money in this country.
literally the one thing that we know that's like the triple, like the combination of like what 7 8 various other states total GDP or
Yeah,
total military budgets is basically the coupling of ours. And if that's the only place that we beat them at, and they beat us at every other metric. So it's very much a shifting of global poles when it comes to China and USA. And as Xi Jinping stated to Donald Trump to his face, he stated that United States is becoming a declining nation. And he did not mean that under Joe Biden or previous administrations. He's specifically talking about what Trump has done, because the effects have reverberated across many industries and aspects of the United States and on the global stage as well.
yeah.
And that's now, Mhm.
It's been a very quick. I mean, I think seeing the contrast between when Trump was president and then switching back to Biden and then back to Trump, seeing the difference in how the globe really uh, talked about and handled the United States. I mean, right now we see even our Western allies are supposed to be the ones that have our back the most, kind of objecting and going against what we do, because we have been vocally going against what they do with things like Ukraine and more.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
I mean,
even going on it on their own, like with the when we reported the EU putting together their own group of countries together to look at ways to get the Strait of Hormuz open without the United States. So we're
yeah,
seeing our allies, group up together and find a way forward, as United States is dealing with a erratic leader, unfortunately.
yeah. And I mean, I think what we're going to see is that. Oh, sorry, I had to scratch my nose there. And I think what we're going to see here is Trump tries to think he's the tough guy or he's the guy in charge when it comes to situations like with Taiwan. But I really do think that China is going to try to do this the diplomatic way. I mean, we've already seen that Taiwan's leader has talked about the idea of a peaceful reunification. And I know that the Chinese view Taiwan as China. So it's,
Yeah.
I'm sure that even among the public support, an idea of a military invasion of Taiwan isn't exactly something that people would love, even though the government can still do what they want, even though they do that in America. the point stands.
Yeah, it
And
could very well be like a Russia Crimea situation. You know, we started going in on Taiwan, trying to make them more of a U.S. related country compared to China, and it can very well be the same precedent as what happened with Russia and Crimea, and with Obama and Putin as well. I could
absolutely,
very well see
absolutely.
that be a a comparison to what happened then to what's going on now. Actually, now that I think about it, that's a very good comparison between the two. Yeah, I think that very well could be a likely scenario, because as Putin stated with Crimea, he felt like that it was a piece of Russia, just as China sees that Taiwan is a part
Piece
of
of
China.
China. Yeah.
Any encroaching on it, we will put it down and take over. Literally, they have the force to do it, and they're literally right next to the country, so they have the means to get there, and the fact to put up a fight if that is something that the United States does
And
unfortunately
China
go
doesn't
down.
have like the lighting, that the view, the optic that China has. Russia has like the view to the west. Russia's always been this forever bad guy. Anything that Russia does is almost something to be like viewed upon under a microscope and criticized. Whereas with China, it's different. They don't share that same relationship with the West. They don't share that same history, and it's a lot different. So I do think as well that Russia going in invading Ukraine, NATO's going to pop up and do exactly what they were literally made to do and be like, oh well, the Russians are moving in on Europe. What do we do with this? And then that's literally what NATO is made for. There's been no group to stop Chinese expansion on the scale that
No,
there is NATO. There isn't.
no. I mean, back in freshman year of college, I wrote a paper that ended up being a part of a book. I mean, I was even talking about the South China Sea at that point, with China actually making islands within that region to expand their maritime border.
Yeah.
And just thinking about how all the information from then till now, that it for me, that is like a foundational grounding for them to begin the process of bringing Taiwan under their flag,
Yeah, just
realistically.
slowly but surely expanding what they consider China until Taiwan is in China's borders.
Yeah, literally, and just let this Iran conflict just wage out, let it just destroy everything on the oil markets, on the energy markets, and Taiwan is going to see that China is their supporter, and that's where that reunification could possibly happen if this individual in Taiwan does end up getting elected. And I'm not sure when those elections are, but we will have information on that when they do happen. And now we're going to turn to the domestic side of things. And Mohammed, I know you are a Massey fan, so why don't you let our listeners know what's kind of going on here with Massey, APAC, and this Kentucky race? Because this is probably the most blatant evidence of corrupt money in politics used for the wrong way,
Yeah,
without doubt.
so for those who don't know Thomas Massey, he's a Republican in the Kentucky's 4th district that has been sitting in the seat for quite a while now. He's one of the most consistent actual conservative voters in the entire House. He votes conservative more than most, but he votes with Trump 91% of the time. But because of the 9% of the time he doesn't vote with Trump and how vocal he is about it, things like Epstein and the military,
Yeah.
and Israel support, he's been considered an opponent and somewhat of a nuisance to the president. So the president and his cronies or supporters or funders and donors have been working in a way to kind of get Massey out by the means of spending massive amounts of money. So
Massive.
Massey's opponent actually has been getting spending of around 25 to 32 million dollars, which for those of you who don't know is way more than the average race. Way
Yeah.
more. I mean,
Most expensive house race right now in history.
you'll very rarely find. I'm talking like if there was like if every house race were to happen right now, maybe like less than 10% of house races would have one of the candidates have more than $1 million in donations for that specific election cycle, and
Yeah.
that's more than 1 million, and that's already generally preset candidates or candidates backed by the system. So to have somebody come in with 25 to 32 million, it's not even the summer yet of the election year, has been huge and crazy. And a lot of this money has been coming from people like Mary Adelson, Paul Singer, people who are actually in the Epstein files. And they've been directly labeled themselves as Zionists. They basically say they have more of an allegiance to Israel than to America. Mary Adelson is actually asked on a hot mic if she supports Israel over America. And she said, well, I support both countries, but my home is, I align more with, Israel in terms of what I believe. And so we have these people who are massively coming in, these pro-Israel groups, individuals, pro-Zionist groups and individuals, and people on the president's side who are coming in to kind of toss things up on Massey and to be able to get him to lose by spending massive amounts of money. Now, it's going to be an interesting race because Massey is still projected to win, but things can get close, and this is the closest race he's projected to have in the last 12 years, actually, because he usually smokes the other his opponent. Massey actually calls this an attempt by foreign lobbies and billionaires to buy the seat in a referendum on America versus outside influence. Now, which is a very good point. What we've been seeing is that this money from outside influences, foreign influences more, has been really influencing and controlling how much people are able to see and get optics as to what's going on with the race. And that's the biggest thing with these elections is that really the number one thing people look for is likability. Really is the top thing. And so as long as someone can appear likable to a crowd of people, that crowd of people think, oh, well, I might not agree with everything they say, but I like them. They seem human. I'll vote for them. And the more money you can spend to put somebody's face in front of other people, the more just seeing somebody more often makes you like them more. Yeah. And on top of that, then you get the constant bad news that even if you don't agree with it, after a while it starts to sink in. And so that's the big issue with all this funding and lobbying that comes in from these foreign groups or outside, like just sources, even from the pharmaceutical industry and more, is that they're able to influence things in these subtle ways just through the sheer amount of money and power they have with it. And when it comes to these pro-Zionist, pro-Israel groups and seeing what they're trying to do with Massey, I mean, he's like the example. Because what they're trying to say is if we're able to get Thomas Massey out, we can essentially get rid of anybody because he's a very strong candidate in a district with a lot of hometown support. And also, he just is one of the candidates who has the most consistent elections in terms of how much he destroys, honestly, his opponent. So we've been seeing them really go crazy into this, and I think it'll be interesting to see what happens. This is one of the races I'm going to be keeping my eyes on the most, honestly. It's a big way for – I think that if it works – I think if he does get replaced, that it's not going to work out in the GOP's favor because it's likely they'll just end up losing that seat in the next 2-4 years once the president leaves, because I think this – race is a big test to see where the GOP's foreign policy stands and where they want to go with it in the future. I mean, I think more and more Americans are turning towards isolationism and the idea of we don't need to be the world police. We don't need to be involved in all these wars. We don't need to be the ones who have their claws across everywhere in the world in order to accomplish these things. And it'll be interesting to see which way the voters go here.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see which way the voters go, and it's definitely, as you were saying, a referendum on America First versus outside influence, and as well, if Massey is not elected, this would be a solidified win for Trump, as a lot of the GOP members that actually voted to convict him. I think there's about 7 of them. 6 of them have actually lost their seat. So I'm looking at this as if Massey does win, this shows that Trump does not have a full iron grip on the GOP, at least at the voter base wise. I mean, I really hope it's the case with Massey coming through. I mean, he is a true American hero. I think JD Vance even stated that he unfortunately stated that Thomas Massey votes with us 99% of the time or something like that, except when it goes against the Constitution. And it's just like, what the fuck?
No, literally, of all that he votes for, he's voted for Trump more than most Republican congressmen has.
I'm like,
but because he's so vocal against these exceptional few things, like Epstein, like Israel.
Right.
Like America's giant support for forever wars. And those are actually fairly traditionally conservative things to have. Like, yeah, America shouldn't be in forever wars. America shouldn't be the world police. America shouldn't be using our influence across these countries and dictating what they can and can't do. Let's just do business with them and shut up.
literally, and he's targeting Lauren Boebert now as well. And she even put out tweets about it, about how she knows that Donald Trump is now targeting her and wants someone to primary her. But she said, I'm America first, I'm MAGA, and I am standing with my friend Thomas Massey, because they were the ones that put their signatures on the line for the Jeffrey Epstein discharge. Well, sorry, the Transparency Act, and that should tell you something,
Yeah.
how mad that he is that this act is actually law and they're just not following it. And he is willing to unseat Republicans that were cheering him on throughout his campaign process. And even looking at the commentators on the podcast side, Tucker Carlson, Nick Fuentes, who he is now looking to establish as domestic terrorists, you see that the reasoning that these groups of individuals, which are all within the conservative party and conservative movement, are now really starting to wake up and see just the idiocracy and the reversal that Donald Trump has been doing ever since he walked into office in January. And they are sick of it. They want America first, not Israel first, America later. That is beneath them, and that is above Trump. That's all that Trump cares about. As he said, he doesn't care about your financial situations, and then he doubled down on it. So it's nothing far from the fact that we're seeing an administration that is, one, trying to poach very patriotic Americans on Democratic side and on Republican side, as well as wanting foreign influence to flood our elections. And it's just very sad to see that a lot of people were duped over this man. And we won the electoral vote, won the popular vote, but that's been a quick reversal ever since his policies have been announced and or have taken effect. And now we're going to move on to some legislative updates, looking at, as I said earlier, housing, transportation, and reconciliation. House GOP leaders plan a Wednesday vote on an amendment bipartisan housing bill. This is the 21st Century Road to Housing Act, tweaking the Senate passed version despite Trump's pushback to attach SAVE Act or other priorities. It aims to boost supply and affordability with measures on zoning, financing, and institutional investor limits on single-family homes. Immigration enforcement tweaks are also facing racing forward as well. So with that, Bill, we did talk extensively in our last podcast really about the intricacies within that bill and why the House was looking to mark it up, because they got their memos from their housing lobbyist individuals who have, pushed them to add in things in this bill that just make it not as strong as the Senate version. And it does seem like that the House is not going to take up the Senate versions. They're just going to put it in their own, and then it's going to start this whole cycle again where that bill is going to have to go to the Senate, where it's probably going to be dead on arrival. And then you're going to have Thune and Johnson at each other's necks again, just how they were with this DHS funding bill. And it just speaks to it again. Republicans can't get nothing done when they have every single branch. They can never get something positively done for the American people whenever they have all branches of government. There's nothing except by executive order. Anything legislatively that needs to pass, nothing beneficial has happened. All that baby bonds, all that is all executive orders. Those are not pieces of legislation that have been signed, debated, and signed by the president himself. So on the legislative front, there is really not much that he has done. And Muhammad, I'm gonna get your thoughts before we continue on to the transportation, which is actually new. This transportation bill is some new information from when we had previously talked. There has been new text that has arisen. But Muhammad, what are your thoughts on the housing aspect and what's going on there? Might have lost them, but we're going to move on to the transportation. So the House released the 580 billion Build America 250 Act, which has a 5-year authorization, reauthorization. Sorry, it includes new annual user fees, starting at $130 for EVs, rising to $150, and $35 for plug-in hybrids, which will be up to $50 to address the highway trust fund shortfalls as gas tax revenue drops. House Transportation Ranking Member Rick Larson supports the user pays approach, but Senate Democrats and environmental groups strongly oppose, fearing it hinders EV adoption, setting up inter-party clashes. So, with this specifically, it's going to be interesting to see how these EVs and the plug-in fees will really work out, and what's going to be affected by it. As this text continues to get more fleshed out, be sure to catch our next episode on Wednesday, so we can get a little bit more details as to how this can affect one, the car market, and as well as transportation overall. And then looking on to reconciliation, Senate GOP eyes for action this week on the 72 billion package for ICE, 38 bill, which is 38 billion, and then the CBP funding, which is 26 billion. All that, add that together, you get that 72 billion, and that will be funded through fiscal year 2029. And this is going to happen with markups and a votorama. It includes fights over the 1 billion on Secret Service White House ballroom security upgrades, but this is gonna need the 60 vote threshold, unless they're able to pass it through this reconciliation process, which I believe that if this does have to go through the 60 vote threshold, this could very well be the reasoning why they removed the filibuster. They've been looking for practical reasonings to do it, and the president has been making such a hard pitch for this ballroom that it very well could be that the filibuster is blown up because of this ballroom, and because it is subject to this 60-day, to this 60 vote threshold, which would be terrible. To think that this is the one thing that's going to allow this threshold to be removed. And even, AOC has started to come out in support of removal of the filibuster. I personally am one that does not agree that the filibuster should be removed. I understand that it can stop majority driven legislation, but that is exactly sometimes the mechanisms you need within democracy. You need to have those checks when there is overwhelming majority that may be pinning down a minority, no matter the case and no matter who it is. So having that needed 60 vote threshold just make sure that there is consensus across the board between Democrats and Republicans if those opposition votes are needed for bills to pass, and also breeds compromise as well. And I think that bypassing the filibuster for immigration enforcement priorities, or for this ballroom, or for really any democratic needs, is not the way to go. Realistically, I think that is they call it the nuclear option for a reason, because once that happens, the legislation that you will start seeing passed left and right will leave you astonished. And finally, going to move on to our final section here, looking at miscellaneous things, looking at funds, trades, and speculation. So, the Department of Justice is reportedly advancing a near 1.8 billion anti-weaponization or compensation fund as part of settling Trump's 10 billion IRS lawsuit over tax record leaks. And this is insane because critics call it a taxpayer funded slush fund, potentially benefiting January 6th defendants and allies, claiming Biden era targeting. 93 House Dems oppose it. And it's insane that that 10 billion is now going to be rewritten as a 1.8 billion slush fund that these individuals could use. And for me, this is dangerous because this can very well be the fund that Trump can use for the same thing to happen again on January 6th. I mean, what's for it to stop? There's now going to be a pile of money that can be used for these operations, but hopefully that is ultimately not the case, and it's just primarily used for legal reasons and things of that nature, for lawsuits that these individuals had to try to clean themselves up from treacherous acts that they did on this country on January 6th. And continuing on, there's been a lot of highlight recently on Trump's high trade volume, which has been 3,700 trades, which I think someone broke down that ended up being like 7 trades per minute in his time so far while being at the White House. And this is getting a lot of attention from Wall Street. And this is important to note because Obama, Trump, all previous presidents never had this issue, but yeah, we're just turning a blind eye to someone who's doing it so egregiously and I may say effectively, because he's made himself very wealthy throughout his short time so far in the White House. And scrutiny should be made bipartisan across all bodies. There's no reason why bringing up these trades makes you think that you hate Donald Trump or something. It's just to make sure that there is no corrupt individual within the White House, within the highest office of these United States, and it seems like we're very far from that. 37,000 trades, and as the investigation continues on, we will be sure to give you as much information as made possible. And then ending off just on the space side of things. There's been ongoing chatter about recovered non-human biologics from crashes with species like the Greys, reptilians, Nordics, and mantis referenced in some disclosure circles. This is often tied to government and corporate secrecy claims. So that's a little interesting to see and read that these 4 groups are the races that our military and government have pulled from various crash sites. I mean, these are all, I could definitely say for all 4 of them, are various races that we've seen in various forms of sci-fi fiction. And like I said, we have Disclosure Day coming out in next month, actually,
Do you know how
basically to
funny
go
about that movie
over.
is the
Yeah.
actual way they break it, like break the news?
I mean, as I
It's
was getting
possible.
to,
It's
they
possible.
put it in your face and they make you see it 1,000 times, literally 1,000 times. Like, I mean, just I'm just thinking about like the first time I've actually like seen Grays on like in a movie in some format. I mean, it's a funny movie, but I think the one the one scary movie, I think 4 or 5 or whatever, when they do a parody on World of the
They pee
Worlds,
out of the
and
finger.
even World of the Worlds themselves, like all of these alien movies and build up is literally leading to this Disclosure Day, so that when it happens, we're not completely caught off guard. Like, yes, obviously we're gonna be caught off guard because now it's aliens. It's going to be stated that aliens do exist. There's apparently a speech that has been prepared for the president to um, basically speak on Disclosure Day and basically state that there is extraterrestrial life as well. And then you match that with all of the recent pastors who've had that secret meeting about preparing their congregations for the realization that there are extraterrestrials out there. This is all just preparing for it. I mean, we've seen aliens in almost every single sci-fi piece of fiction, so really they're just training us to be able to um, basically just adjust and consume that the fact that we are not the only ones. And
Yeah.
it's the Greys, reptilians, Nordics, and the mantids. We've seen the Greys, reptilians are almost in every single sci-fi movie. Nordics are apparently supposed to be like 7 feet tall, blonde hair, blue-eyed individuals, and the mantids are obviously the insects, and that makes me think specifically of Men in Black. And this whole
Yeah.
thing makes me just think of Men in Black in general. I mean, might have to go back and rewatch
With
those
everything going
movies,
on,
I should
honestly, I feel
say.
like Men in Black would hit real good right now.
Yeah, it definitely would hit real good right now. So I definitely am going to go back to watch that. But yeah, that is all that I do have for today, my Balloteers. But keep liking, sharing, subscribing. And Mohammed, do you have anything?
No, I don't have anything to add. Thank you, Mikkel, for again joining us. Well, joining me. I guess I get. And do either of us join each other, or are we just the
Yeah, I was gonna say we
podcast
join
as a
each
whole?
other. We
Yeah.
join each other on the podcast. That's how I would put it.
Well, Mikhail, it was fun coming together for another serious podcast episode. Them ending with the topic of aliens, and which I think is very legitimate and official. I can't wait to
Oh
see.
yeah.
I mean, dude, aliens are definitely real. Definitely real.
Yeah, I just don't see how they're just not. And it's like I mean, if they are, it's like, is there an actual God? But then also
Well, God's real. God's the creator of the universe. Probably
You
just
had Lauren
aliens just
Boebert,
somehow in there.
you had Lauren Boebert starting to state that, these individuals, you can call them aliens, but she's using the words interdimensional, which is even deeper than that. Like, that's goes even further than just aliens. That can get into the form of demonic creatures and things of that nature. What we call aliens is technically references demons and giants and other books. So
Anything
it's,
can happen.
yeah,
Anything can
definitions.
happen. Anything can happen.
Yeah, literally anything can very much happen. I mean, think about it. We got the Odyssey coming out as well. That, I mean, doesn't deal with aliens, but it deals with, creatures outside of the normal imagination that have always been talked about throughout the years and decades. Cyclopses, sea beasts, the Leviathan, all of, like, the sirens, the mermaids, all of these things. And it's interesting to see that we're getting them all within a summer. Honestly,
Yeah.
very interesting. I like making I like making unconventional patterns like that, to say the least, because it always keeps you thinking that not everything may seem what it is, and patterns are very much the best way to piece these things together. So that's what we try to do best here on Behind the Ballot. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us today, where we keep politics engaged, balanced, and informative. Stay curious, stay critical, and stay involved. I'm Mikkel Jenkins, and until next time, keep looking beyond the headlines and behind the ballot, and keep subscribing and keep sharing. We are currently at 56. Let's see if we can get to 60 by Friday. Thank you very much.
Thank you everyone for chiming in. God bless you all. God bless America, and have a